As I record this video, we are in early March. We just passed through my two least favorite months of the year, which are January and February. So why is it I dislike these 2 months so much? It goes back to my young adulthood when my family and I were living in a mobile home in Missouri. That mobile home had very poor insulation, and in the coldest months of the year, January and February, the pipes, which were a plastic PVC type, would frequently freeze and then later burst. We had so little money in those days that hiring a plumber was out of the question. I learned to cut those pipes, replace sections, and glue them together. But it was a miserable experience crawling under that mobile home in super cold temperatures, trying to aim a flashlight at the pipes and do the work that needed to be done. And yeah, I did know about running the water at night and keeping the cabinet doors open, and I even bought an electric heater to wrap around one of those pipes that frequently froze, but nothing solved the situation entirely. And since those days, I've been paranoid about frozen pipes, no matter where we live. In Texas, we don't have a long season where pipes can freeze, but in the month of January and much of the month of February, temperatures can sometimes dip into single digits at night, and pipes can definitely freeze. These days, I live in a house, not a mobile home, but that makes pipe repairs even more of a problem because walls and floors might need to be broken up just to get to those leaky pipes. And so, starting in January, I am constantly checking my weather app to see what the nighttime low temperatures are going to be for the next several days. This year, we had 2 weeks throughout the period where temperatures dipped down as low as 9 degrees, and that is not good. And just to be on the safe side, Benedict and I were making sure all the under-the-sink cabinets were open and the water was running at least slightly. Well, we got through those cold streaks okay, no frozen pipes, no leaky pipes, but January and February every year involve a constant pressure that I don't have to worry about or think about in March and all the way through December. But when I'm in the midst of a super cold spell in mid-January, I do have one consolation. I know that in about 6 weeks, at least here in Texas, there will be no more cold streaks, no more need of checking the weather app or watching the local weather forecast, no more need of making sure my cabinet doors are open and my faucets are running for nearly a year. All of that will be over, and all I have to do to get to that blessed time of no more, when I'm in January and in those cold nights, all I have to do is just wait. Just mark time, allow some weeks to pass, and the possibility of frozen pipes will be over for a year. Well, how do I know that? How do I know that March will bring warmer temperatures than January did? I know it from experience. I've seen it happen again and again. March isn't just occasionally a little bit warmer than January here in the Dallas area. It is always warmer, significantly warmer than January. I've never seen an exception. So in those nasty cold January days, I just remind myself that March isn't all that far away. Time is my friend. Okay, there's the illustration. What does that have to do about diabetes? For most people, eating something like the standard American diet, time is not their friend. Every year that goes by, every decade that passes, brings them closer to diabetic miseries. For a long time, it's a very gradual process. Their A1C may not be much worse at 35 than it was at 25, but there is a slow motion breakdown of the metabolic system. Although they don't know it, they're on a collision course with diabetes and its plethora of complications and health hazards. And all they have to do to get to that collision is nothing. Just live out their years, go from one day to the next eating their miserable, sugar-filled, starch-heavy junk diet, and they're on schedule for a visit with the doctor who will look them straight in the eyes and tell them, "I'm sorry to have to say this, but you are a type 2 diabetic." Although they were blissfully unaware of it, Time has been their enemy and has been bringing them steadfastly and irresistibly to this point from their youth. Glucose levels are never static. They can and usually do get worse over the years, and this is why so many doctors and endocrinologists like to call diabetes a progressive disease. Being progressive means it has a tendency to increase. If you're a light diabetic today, you'll be a worse diabetic in a few years, and you may be a raging diabetic in 10 years. Your diabetes is not going to stay where it is and behave itself. It constantly wants to conquer and gain new ground. But the idea of glucose levels being not static can actually work for you instead of against you. Your A1C and your average glucose levels from day to day can either increase or decrease, and this largely depends on the glucose spikes or rises you get after your meals. If you get big spikes after you eat, and that is what you will get when you eat meals with lots of carbohydrates, those big spikes will continually and eventually pull your glucose levels and your A1C higher and higher. It may be imperceptible from day to day and maybe even from year to year, but sooner or later your glucose levels will rise. This is why you had a 6.2 A1C in your 40s, but now in your 50s you have a 7.5 A1C, and in another few years you might have a 9 or a 10 or a 12. And along with higher glucose levels and higher A1C scores, at some point various diabetic complications are going to appear and multiply. Those meal-to-meal and day-to-day glucose spikes are doing what they always do. They're making your diabetes more severe and more of a problem. But what some seem to be ignorant of is that the reverse is also true. When you can manage to convert your glucose spikes into gentle glucose rises after your meals, your overall glucose levels and your A1C scores are going to go down. They will decrease. They will have to decrease. They cannot stay at that elevated range when you're having gentle, minimal, meek, mild little glucose rises after your meals. It is impossible for them to stay as high as they are now. Sometimes when people seriously reduce the carbohydrate in their diet, when they stop eating sugar and products with sugar added, when they no longer eat high-starch foods like bread, potatoes, rice, pasta, and breakfast cereals, their doctors are astonished at the improvement they've made and at the fact that they've gone from diabetic, a diabetic A1C of 6.5 or over, to the point where they're not even pre-diabetic, and they have an A1C in the mid to low 5s. And these astonished doctors will sometimes tell their patients, "This is just a miracle." Now, friends, I believe in miracles because I believe in God. But when your glucose levels decrease and your A1C decreases below diabetic levels due to you slashing your carbohydrate intake, I have to say that's not really a miracle. It's a law of nature. A miracle cannot be repeated at will. It is beyond us, and only God can do it at His own prerogative. But lowering glucose is something that almost any type 2 diabetic can do, whether Christian or atheist or from any other religion. I look at it like dropping this ball. When I loose my fingers from holding a baseball and it falls to the ground, or in this case to the table, I don't say in astonishment, "This is a miracle." It happens every time. And if I dropped that baseball 1,000 times, it would fall to the ground exactly 1,000 times. The law of gravity says that it will, and experience teaches us that it will. And when the ball falls downward, I'm not astonished. I'm not amazed. I don't gasp in surprise. I don't shake my head in wonder. The baseball did exactly what I knew it would do. It followed the laws of nature and did what all baseballs everywhere will do when they're dropped. They will fall. And so your blood sugar will fall once you've made the switch to a low-carb diet, and especially once you replace your breakfast with bulletproof coffee along with eating low-carb meals for the other 2 meals. Now, It will not happen as fast as it takes a baseball to fall to the ground, of course. It might take 6, 8, 10 months, maybe a year to get your glucose levels under the diabetic range. But the very day that you make a commitment to eat a low-carb diet and you throw in time-reduced eating your 2 meals over a 6-hour period every day, the process has begun. And time is now not your enemy. Time becomes your friend. Just like me on one of those cold days in mid-January, all you have to do is wait and just keep right on eating low carb with intermittent fasting. Concentrate on keeping those glucose spikes after your meals low until they're not really spikes at all. They're just gentle rises. Concentrate on doing that day after day, and you are on your way to a non-diabetic A1C, a non-diabetic fasting glucose, and a significant reversing of any diabetic symptoms you may have, and an avoidance of future diabetic complications. Just like those January temperatures, some days are going to be warmer and some days will be colder. Some morning glucose levels may be better than others, and for some days or even weeks you may feel like, well, it just seems like my progress has stopped. Now I'm going back the other way. I'm regressing. But no, you're not regressing. You're not going backwards. Time is taking you to your promised land. Your springtime, your March and April, they're on the way. Just stay the course, trust the process, and keep doing what you're doing. Just like March is always going to be warmer than January, so your average glucose levels are always going to improve when you make it your steadfast goal to 1, eat low carb, less than 50 grams of carbs per day, 2, eat your meals within a 6-hour window every day, 3, never snack in between meals, and 4, keep your post-meal glucose rises gentle, no sharp spikes. If you're doing all that, time is your good friend. And if you allow enough time to pass, and that's all you'll have to do beyond those 4 steps, you will see your promised land. There's a Bible verse which says, "And having done all, to stand." In this case, let me paraphrase it a little bit and put it this way: having done all, give it a little time. I think you're going to be really pleased over the next few months. The process toward your victory has already been set in motion, and you're going to get there, my friend. Now, let me take a look at my weather app on my phone and see, here in March, if there are any freezing nights coming up. It's got a 10-day forecast. Here's a 59, 43, 40, 49, 48, 39, 44, 50, 63, 47. Those are the lows. And no chance of my pipes freezing because we're in March. Your March is coming. In addition to Beat Diabetes, Benedict and I do have another YouTube channel and another type of ministry. I'm referring to our Bible teaching channel, which goes by my name, Dennis Pollock. While you can only see Benedict with me on Beat Diabetes occasionally, you can see us study the Bible together at our dining room table every Thursday. With all that we're doing, producing hundreds of videos and podcasts, sponsoring African missions, helping diabetics reverse their diabetes, giving food to African widows, and sponsoring free medical clinics in Nigeria and Kenya, we need your help. Please consider making regular contributions to Spirit of Grace Ministries.